Hi, and welcome back to New Day here on TV3. Now, when it comes to policy making or implementation of policies, what people usually do, or governments usually do, is go to their think tanks. And here in Ghana, one of our very own think tanks has been recognized internationally, ranked number 4 in Africa, and they are Imani. Now, if you've been checking out the local press, whether on TV or on newspapers, then you'll realize that Mr. Franklin Kujo and his establishment have done great things, and they are being internationally recognized. This morning, he is here with us with another Franklin, Dr. Franklin Oduro, who's a policy analyst at CDD. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
How are you?
Well, I'm surviving.
Good. The role of think tanks, first off. First off, congratulations.
Yay. Well, congratulations to all of us. I mean, CDD ranked well as well. Most Ghanaian think tanks did quite well. And I think it's a positive statement that the recognition is coming from our side, and I think that the recognition must be coming from within.
Indeed. I agree with you on that one. Now, let's talk about the role of think tanks, because everywhere else in the world, I won't say everywhere else in the world, but most major countries, when it comes to policy making, they come to people like yourselves to assist when it comes to trying to formulate and come up with policies that can be effective to the current situations. Is that the situation right now here in Ghana with yourselves?
Well, perhaps I'll start and maybe Franklin will come in. I think it's a mixed picture in the case of Ghana. First of all, we have to recognize that the growth of think tanks in Africa and even in sub-Saharan Africa, even Ghana, is a recent phenomenon.
Yes.
Right? It's not been it hasn't been established for a long time compared to other regions. But if you look at the role that think tanks in Ghana or even in sub-Saharan Africa have played over the years, you could make the point that many of our research work, many of our analysis do inform policy making in Ghana. The question we have to find ourselves is to what extent that government agencies ready and recognize think tanks and the work that we do, and therefore come to seek some of these kind of analysis and research that we do. Indeed, generally there is a deficit between industry and research in Africa.
Yes.
There's a lot of tons of research work done by academia, universities, think tanks, and yet we don't approach them. But I think we're doing well. It's not what we want. We think that think tanks can inform, can influence, can help with our development processes in Ghana. But we can do better.
Okay.
Well, see, essentially we are second-hand dealers in ideas. So what essentially happens is that we sift through most of the ideas that have been tried elsewhere. And as you know, there's nothing really new under the sun. So we only try to break down sometimes expert language in a manner that will be accommodating to not only the media, but even policy makers. Because most of the time, policy making seems to be, sometimes it's been made to, we've been made to believe that you only have to be some sort of a don in order to make some policy. But the end goal really is that people's lives ought to be affected.
Yeah.
And so we are in this space. We are playing this middleman role so that we can help leaders in order to fast track whatever visions that they have. Because you see, it's only a 4-year window. You have 2 years really to do work. Because the first year you spend per our constitution, you spend the presidency, not this one, but all presidents since 1992 would spend a quality amount of their time fixing people. The president appoints many people, probably doesn't even know them. And the second year, you are just getting off.
Yeah.
The third year, you've got to really show. The last year is the elections. You don't have the time. So your manifestos, you see, there's always a discordant relationship between the manifesto and then even the visions that you build for yourselves.
Yeah.
Now, these think tanks already are looking at these policies. It's easy. I mean, the CDD has this influential Afrobarometer work that they did. I would think all the problems plaguing us in our social sectors, the answers are there. I mean, ISODEC has done exceedingly important work when it comes to pricing utilities in this country. I mean, we have been in the space of housing, real estate, and sometimes most of the things you hear afterwards in terms of the directions, then you ask yourself, are these properly policymakers part of us? Because then it makes it look as if we aren't really doing our work.
Yes.
But what happens therefore is that international observers and even people here would see through and then say, look, this is what we think should be done. And I'm sure Doc here plays a number of roles in terms of hosting most foreigners, business people, diplomats, always looking for answers about the economy, rather from the think tanks. But then our own people, well, maybe because we are here, sometimes, but we expect that this engagement would deepen. We shouldn't be where we are in terms of the problems we are facing at all.
Okay, looking at, the work that think tanks do, I'm sort of sitting there and I'm thinking.
Did you say think tanks?
I said think tanks. Can you imagine? Kwame would kill me. Mind your language. It's think. Let me correct. Think. We see, but it's a tongue twister. It's a tongue twister. Think tanks. I'm just thinking about the average person who probably doesn't really have an idea what a think tank is. So is it a bunch of people? This is what I've just had in my mind. A bunch of people sitting in a room, and then you just get ideas. And can you just describe what the process is and how, for example, Imani would decide to pick on one area of reform or one particular area to focus on? Does each company, for example, CDD, would you guys both focus in the same area? Or would each think tank say, okay, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing that? And how do you think to get it all down?
Okay, well, every think tank has its mission statement and a vision. Most of the think tanks I know of in this country have one vision, basically to improve the livelihoods of people. But like a government, there are various departments. We at Imani essentially research economic trends for the benefits of businesses, civil society, and government. But we also realize that could be a broader mandate. We've seen a serious deficiency in the Department of Strategy. The Department of Strategy when it comes to national affairs, the Department of Due Diligence when contracts are done, the Department of Analyzing Vested Interest when again contracts are there. And so within that department, you'll be amazed that if we make a mistake on a $3 billion Chinese loan, for instance, people's livelihoods for the last 4 years have virtually stalled because the strategy in order to draw that type of money into the system was not properly thought through. But then you have think tanks who are saying, we've studied the morals of the Chinese. If you don't show $1 million, you won't get $1 billion. But the advice was not taken. We've come full circle to the very things we wrote, I believe, July 10, 2011, that if you are going to get money from the Chinese, your projects have to be profitable. You don't have to bundle profitable projects with unprofitable ones. So we think that that is where our focus really should be. Or you want to build houses. There are tons of people in this country who can build houses. Houses are not things that should be imported. But again, if you want private participation, government has the land. You have the power. You invite anybody who wants to build, so that you don't shortchange yourself looking for money in a market where commercial rents are charged, but you are working with the provision that social rents will be charged. Money doesn't, looking for money is not like going to Hollywood. Even though Hollywood makes a lot of money, it's Wall Street business. And these are some of the things that talk about. Probably finally, we decided that at some point we'll look at the oil projections when oil was found, because we thought there are too many fantastic claims. You wouldn't believe it, but in that type of relationship with the, let's say, state body like the GNPC, we had a lot of stonewalling. Now, we have accepted that this year, for instance, we are going to come down from 100,000 barrels to 70,000 barrels, losing $1 billion a year. That's not pretty.
Dr. Franklin,
yes.
I'm going to ask you this question because when you started, you said that think tanks are variably new when it comes to African societies. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think that's because of the characteristics or the traditional mentality of African leaders, whereby when they sit at that particular position, they are believed or perceived to know it all? And getting information from people who are outside your immediate circle is somewhat of a waste of time. I mean, because I know for a fact that England, USA, other governments, they have government think tanks. So they've recognized the importance of such a thing and actually incorporated it into what they do. What is stopping us? Is it a cultural thing? Is it what is stopping us from embracing that whole fact that yes, there are separate people outside of us that are able or capable of coming up with policies that are viable, not only just for the 4-year term, but long term?
All right. So, I mean, there are two things to this question. First of all, you could argue that the reason why think tanks, and for that matter, views, opinion from the middle or from the center or other group is not really entertained by our government is because of the political history of the continent. Our countries have not been open for a very long time. It's in the very recent time, we're talking about 20 years in Ghana, that we've had an open system where ideas and views other than ruling governments are entertained. If you look at Ghana, for instance, we're talking about the first credible think tank being emerging around the late 80s or early 90s, and even that was through the instrumentalities of the World Bank. So the Center for Economic Policy Analysis, CEPA, the IEA, that were actually set up to advise the economic recovery program. And even that, if not for the World Bank and others, I'm not sure our government would have allowed those kind of systems to happen. So we are learning, and so it's going to take a while before think tanks and views other than government are accepted and recognized. But the second reason is the fundamental importance that governments and agencies attach to research. How much value do we place on research? Do we understand what research means? Do we understand what research is supposed to do? Instead of going on air and trying to criticize findings of opinions, polls, or other research, it's for you to look at it. What can I learn from this? What can I learn for us to inform what we do? The whole definition, the whole understanding of think tanks is just about organizations whose mission is to inform public policy through research and analysis. You take a subject matter. If you take Afrobarometer survey, for instance, we seek opinions of citizens. This is what Ghanaians say. As a policymaker, you sit back, you reflect what Ghanaians are saying. Are we doing something right or wrong? It's not a criticism. It's about what can you learn from the past. I think our government agencies are not receptive to ideas other than what they think they know. And as Franklin said, ideas are not kept in one person's mind. If you build your manifesto, it's not a bunch of political people who sit somewhere and say this is what we want to do. You have to open up and get some ideas from elsewhere. But we are not in that position yet. This is a country that we have not. We have seen ideas different from our own as being opposition, as not being truthful, as trying to bring me down, and therefore, no matter what we do, no matter what we put out, we don't take it as something that we can learn from. We take it as, oh, these people don't like us, so we're not going to take it. I think that's the problem. But we also do know that, and I can tell, I won't mention names, several instances where party government officials will come behind the scenes. They will go on radios and criticize your document, but behind the scenes they will come back and take it. So that you could see that there is, they know the value of it. But for the politics and partisan nature of it, we discredit this in public, and then we turn around and come back to take it. And I think we are not doing ourselves any justice, any good if we behave that way.
What kind of challenges, well, apart from the one you just mentioned, what other kind of challenges does the think tanks face? I can't say it. What other challenges?
Well, there are several of these challenges. First of all, we talk about impact in terms of usage of our work. Franklin and I and others sitting there, when we do our work, we can't go and force a minister or government to take these things, and it's very painful.
So you can just only put it out.
You can only put it out. It's very painful that we spend time, we spend resources, do quality research, and then 10 years or 5 years, the state will come back to do the same kind of thing that we did about 5 years ago. So it's very challenging when you do all these kinds of studies and nobody makes use of it. It's very painful.
Frankly, you guys have to understand that if I'm a minister sitting in somewhere and you guys have come up with something that's just about to make me look very bad and ineffective, then maybe, you can understand a little bit of the animosity that comes. I mean, I understand that you're doing it for the betterment of the nation. These guys are not sitting there for the betterment of the nation. La pocket.
Benny.
Possibly. But you see, like Doug rightly said, I mean, what steps are you taking yourselves then? I mean, we've heard a number of times that people have said in authority, we also need to create our own think tanks. They start 1, 2, 3 days. So they give the people the money, they share the money, and the thing falls into an abyss.
Didn't think about
because you see, the processes of thinking is no cakewalk. The fact of the matter is this: if you balk at even what independent minds are telling you, well, why don't you set up governments? I believe have economic management teams. You'll be surprised to know that in the thick of affairs, and I can give examples. The chairman of the Council of State under late Mills, may his soul rest in peace, complained bitterly that even though the Council of State had experienced people, and this was a whole former VC of the university, had the intellectuals, they were not consulted on the single most important infrastructure project to happen in this country after the Kosovo Dam, the XTS, and he lamented. So within government itself, there are independent, serious minds who are not talking to each other. Right. And you see that playing out in the policy arena. So it's like distributing laptops without educational content. It means Education Ministry and Ministry of Communication are not talking to each other. Now, so when we sit back and we say, these are the things you need to look at, you may think that in the short term, it may probably be doing you some ill good, basically. But you've got to strategize. And I think the political class has got to understand that we are partners in development. We criticize, obviously, when we have to criticize. And there are always solutions in the criticism. It is the way you take it. Sometimes people unduly focus on the personalities involved, and then they don't take the message. I thought, a couple of weeks ago, I was in the studio here, I think on Agenda, and I was telling the whole Minister of Information, a deputy actually, that Ghana has an infrastructure deficit of about $1.5 billion every year. His response instantly was that is a lie. It's not true. Today, the president has set up an infrastructure committee, and the president's statement rightly said that there is an infrastructure gap of $1.5 billion a year. So you're not talking to each other. And these are you see, we have to banish the mundane. And suddenly so. It's like a cross we wield. And we can swing it both sides, really.
All right. We've actually run out of time, but thank you so much for both coming in. And you've actually got me thinking now.
I'm thinking too.
No, you are thinking.
I'm thinking.
Anyway, this has been Dr. Franklin Oduro.